So happy to be sharing you with some information about the Fulbright US Student Program with you. You should be seeing my screen, folks, as you're getting logged on. And that's got some important information that's going to be really helpful for us throughout this presentation because there are so many of you. My colleague Chanel Vismara on this call is going to be sorting you all into breakout rooms while I shout at you for the first 45 to 50 minutes of this presentation so that you're able to go into your breakout rooms and meet your Fulbright program advisors on a more personal basis, learn about applying to Fulbright through your institution. So as we're getting started here, and I'm just going to give it just a few more seconds for those folks who are connecting, please do go through and rename yourself so that Chanel knows which breakout rooms to put you in. Because I think we are at about 316 people. My goal here is to see how sprained Chanel's pointer finger can get by the time she's assigned everybody. All right, Chanel, I see we do still have some folk in the waiting room. Let's see.
We'll solve that.
And if you wouldn't mind going ahead and letting those people in, I'm going to start recording and we'll get into it because I understand we are a bit past the hour here. And Chanel, you said we are recording already?
Yes, I did it.
All right, we're going to fix that in post, folks. All right, folks, thanks so much for joining us. My name is Grant Stream Gonzalez, and I work at the Institute of International Education, and I'm going to be taking you through some general information about the Fulbright US Student Program today. I've already said this a couple of times, folks, but I'm just going to say it once more since I think we are a bit of a full group here now. If you wouldn't mind renaming yourself following the instructions that are on the slide just now, that would be really helpful because we're going to go over general information together all here, and then we are going to go into breakout rooms with your institution-specific program advisors. So renaming yourself is going to be really important. Otherwise, you'll stick around here when we go into breakout rooms, and we'll ask you on a one-on-one basis and sort of put you out to where you're supposed to go. So before we get started, I'd like to go through and have a chance for the Fulbright program advisors to introduce themselves. And just so you have a sense of who on the call you will be working with should you decide to apply to this program. So I'm just going to go based on my screen. We'll start with Steve. If you wouldn't mind your name, institution, and such.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Gump, Fulbright Program Advisor at Princeton University.
Thanks so much, Steve. And Brenda.
Hello, I am Brenda Tooley. I'm the Fulbright Program Advisor at Grand Valley State University in Michigan.
Thanks so much for being here, Grand Valley. Elisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Gates from, oh, sorry, wrong Lisa.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I did say Lisa. But Lisa, sorry. Why don't you go ahead and then
okay. Sorry about that. Lisa Gates, Middlebury College. I'm the fellowship advisor here for Fulbright and other fellowships.
Thank you so much. And then we'll bounce back. Elise, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Elise Bowden. I'm the Fulbright Program Advisor for Babson College in Boston.
And this is why it's important, if you've ever taken a public speaking class, folks, not to have fillers, because when you say Elisa, it sounds like a Lisa, and you'll avoid these situations. Anita.
Hi everyone, I'm Anita Schiebel and I'm co-FPA at Colgate University, and you'll get to meet Steve Wright, who is also on the call with us in the breakout room.
Great, thank you both for being here. Daniel.
Hello, I'm Daniel Benyuski and I'm one of the FPAs at Baylor University. Our other FPA, Dr. Andy Hogue, is on the call as well, so maybe he can also introduce himself here.
Do we have, I'm sorry, you said Andy, is that right?
That's correct.
Andy, are you out there somewhere?
I am right here. Yes, Andy Hogue, also one of the FPAs at Baylor.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, to you too, and to all the Baylor students on the call. Let's see, who else do I have here? I think I saw Mara earlier, but she's not on my screen just now.
Yes, hi, I'm Mara McAndrew. I'm the FPA at the University of Oklahoma.
Wonderful. And Alina?
Yes, good evening. My name is Alina Zapalska, and I am Professor of Economics, Director of the Honors Program, and Advisor to the Graduate Scholarship, specifically to the Fulbright Program, and I'm very happy to be here with everyone. I brought with me four former Fulbrighters from the Coast Guard Academy and a bunch of new applicants. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to those Fulbrighters. I wish we had time to hear about your experiences, but I know that you're going to be sharing that with your fellows, your Coast Guard fellows in your breakout room. Veronica?
Hi, I'm Veronica Sherm. I'm the FPA at Purdue, and my colleague Michael Russell should be joining us. I don't know how long he's going to stick around, so he might be in the breakout room. We'll see.
Okay. And now I ask, who did I miss? Because I'm certain that I missed somebody.
It's okay. I'm Nancy Simpson Younger. I'm the FPA at Pacific Lutheran University.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm sorry you were off my my Brady Bunch squares there. And anybody else?
One more. Darla Domke Demont, Coastal Carolina University, FPA as well.
And now I see Karen as well.
And Karen Rank at Hampshire College. I'm the FPA here. Thank you.
And Elaine Willey from Princeton. I'm the FPA on the graduate side. I work with Steve Gump.
Thanks so much for being here, Elaine.
And
All right.
more.
Ryan.
I'm Ryan Lewis, Mount Holyoke College.
Appreciate it. All right. So folks, I think that that's about it for our Fulbright program advisors. If there's one thing that you take away from this presentation, I'm going to be shouting a lot of information at you. The thing that you need to remember is who your Fulbright program advisor is. I say this about any Fulbright program advisor on any campus, but you're lucky to have a Fulbright program advisor on your campus. Not all institutions have one, and they're going to be a tremendous resource to you as you're thinking about applying for this program, because it is a bit of an undertaking. Applying to the Fulbright program. You want to give it a lot of thought, and you want to have as many eyes on it as you can, especially the critical sort of eyes that your Fulbright program advisors may be able to offer you throughout applying to this program. You know, you are a full whole person out there. You got a lot of stories to tell, and your Fulbright program advisor is going to help you tell the story that is relevant and necessary for that project you're proposing to do. On a Fulbright, whether that's teaching English, earning a graduate degree abroad, or doing that independent research project that you're really passionate about. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to sort of flesh all that information out for you so that you can start to chew through that information and decide where it is that you might want to go in the world, what it is you might want to do when you go there, so that you can have that level of information and the baseline of what a Fulbright is before you go and start having these broader conversations with your Fulbright program advisor and going through your campus's institutional process, which is why we're having these breakout rooms, because every campus is going to engage with the application a little bit differently, right? So I hope that you'll have that as a takeaway from this presentation. If you don't remember anything else that I'm about to say, because it is going to be a lot of information and I speak quite quickly. So to get us started, I want to tell you a little bit about the history and the mission of the Fulbright program. This is incredibly important to anyone who's applying, because the mission of the Fulbright program is what's going to separate it from a lot of the other opportunities that you may be looking into right now, a lot of the things that you'll probably be applying for alongside the Fulbright program. And that mission is to foster mutual understanding between the people of the US and people of other countries by way of this exchange. So regardless of what you're going abroad to do on a Fulbright, and there are so many things you can go abroad to do on a Fulbright, it's critically important that as you're applying and as you're overseas on the ground, that you're remembering that the reason that you're going there is to meet people from that country and have them have an opportunity to meet you, right? To participate in this person-to-person exchange. This is a public diplomacy program wherein you're acting as a citizen diplomat and sharing your American experience with the people of another nation and learning about what their experience is like, right? So it's really important, because that's why this program continues to get funded. That's why we're in our 75th year here, as it started in 1946. And why Congress keeps supporting it, why it continues to enjoy this wonderful bipartisan support from Congress. It's sponsored by the United States Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, and it's in fact the flagship exchange program for the US government. It's administered by where Chanel and my colleague, where I and my colleague Chanel work at the Institute of International Education. And overseas, really important to keep in mind as you're applying to this program, folks, it is going to be administered by either binational commissions, Fulbright commissions established in those countries, or US embassies in those host countries. And this is important to understand, because while I'll be talking about the eligibility today, I'll be talking about the things you can do on a Fulbright. It's important to note that Fulbright is in 140 different countries, and we don't make up all the rules here in the US, right? Each one of these is a binational agreement between the US and that host nation. So as you're looking into these, you want to look at how all of these awards are going to be a little bit different depending on the country that you're interested in going to. You want to ensure that you're finding the country and the opportunity that's right for you. And further than that, you want to make sure that you're in fact eligible beyond just the basic Fulbright eligibility, the eligibility for that country, right? So it's going to take a little bit of research on your part. It's going to take some narrowing down, and it's going to take some refinement as you're going through this process. want to touch on diversity and inclusion too, and I think that this connects really well back to that mission that I just mentioned. Fulbright is a federally funded program, and so on that basis alone, we're certainly open to and encouraging of applicants from all different backgrounds. And you see some of the ways that we think about diversity listed on the screen there: race, color, national origin, geographic location, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability status, right? Diversity is a really big word for Fulbright, and we're truly just trying to send abroad a cohort that is as diverse as the US itself, which is quite an undertaking. And one of the reasons that's so important for Fulbright is we just talked about that mission, right, of promoting mutual understanding between the people of the US and people of other countries through this exchange. And we're not going to be able to truly do that unless, again, we're sending abroad a cohort that is as diverse as the US itself. So in writing your application and thinking about your application, it's important to consider the slice of America that you come from, because we all come from a different slice of it, right? And thinking about the sort of American experience that you would like to share with the rest of the world. And just be thoughtful about that as you're preparing an application and thinking about your motivations for applying. In terms of basic eligibility, folks, this is what we have here on the screen. In order to be basically eligible, you do need to be a US citizen by the application deadline. This is an exchange between the US and other countries, so that citizenship is going to be required. We absolutely send naturalized citizens abroad. That's a form of American diversity and an experience we'd like to share with the rest of the world, but citizenship will be required to go to other countries. We bring more folk from other countries into the US than we actually send abroad, but for this side of the program, the US Student Program, citizenship will be required. A bachelor's degree or equivalent in order to go on this grant. So the first time that one can start thinking about applying to this program in terms of putting pen to paper and sending out an application is the fall of their senior year or whenever your last year of undergraduate happens to be, if you're like me and you're taking a victory lap. But it's never too early to start thinking about applying, start setting yourself up. So if we have any freshmen on this call, if we have any sophomores, juniors, or seniors who may have passed this year's deadline and like to apply after, it's just important that you have a bachelor's degree by the time your grant starts, right? So if you're a senior and that you've missed this application deadline, it is not too early to start thinking about this next one. If you're a freshman, it is not too early to start thinking about a few years down the road and ways that you can start setting yourself up to be a more competitive applicant for the Fulbright program. But it is going to require a bachelor's degree. It's a graduate level program. You don't have to be enrolled in graduate school, but you need to demonstrate that you're capable of the work that a Fulbright will demand of you by showing that bachelor's degree. That or equivalent there, that's typically going to apply to our creative and performing artists, some of whom do have a bachelor's degree, but some may just have equivalent training that could reasonably be associated as a bachelor's, right? 4 years in a conservatory or 4 years of apprenticeship in a certain artistic practice. No doctorate at the time of application, so if you were creeping close to that PhD, if you happen to be a graduate student on the call today, you can't have a doctorate at the time of application. If you are going to get that PhD, we have another program for you, the Fulbright Scholar Program. We'd love to talk about that with you. But for the student program, anytime between the bachelor's before getting that PhD is when you're going to be generally eligible. And then I already mentioned this, country-specific requirements. I'm going to show you on the website where it is you can go to see some of those country-specific requirements, some of the country description pages. But it's so important that you're reading not only the Fulbright eligibility generally, but those specific country requirements. Who we typically see applying to this program includes graduating seniors, recent graduates, graduate students, people who are pursuing a PhD or a master's, and early career professionals. And for us, that certainly does mean our creative and performing artists. It's one of the best ways we can fulfill this mission is through art and music and artistic practice. So if you happen to be an artist of any kind and you want to go abroad to practice your art, consider doing it with Fulbright. We'd love to see you do that. These are just some of the people that we most commonly see applying to this program. But again, the range is quite broad, anywhere between that bachelor's but before getting a PhD, so long as you can make a justification about why now? Why do you want to go abroad with a Fulbright now? How does it make sense in your current academic and professional trajectory, right? So now normally I would take questions, but there are about 400 people on the call, and I don't think that it's going to be feasible for everyone to unmute themselves. I do want to just check with our FPAs here. Is there anything that I could clarify about what I've said so far, history, mission, diversity, eligibility, before I move on? Okay, and I appreciate everyone not unmuting themselves at once, I do. So here are the basic types of awards. At the onset, I mentioned you can teach English, pursue a graduate degree abroad, or pursue independent research. And that is very broadly speaking. As you start to approach these awards, you'll see some of the very niche sort of opportunities that we have, but a lot of them are going to fall into these two major buckets. The Study Research Award, there's about 950 of those on an annual basis. You see there for 8 to 10 months because it's going to be based on the academic year of the host country that you're interested in going to. So most of these awards are going to fall somewhere in that range of 8 to 10 months. And the expectation is that you're going abroad for that academic year. Think of maybe one opportunity where that's not the case for the ETAs in Nuuk, Greenland, because winter in Greenland is hard. Not necessarily going to expect you folks to do that on your first go. But for by and large, you should expect to do an academic year abroad. 140 countries participate in this open study research grant. And so what that looks like for independent research is you identify a project that you'd like to do. You tell us what you've been doing at your undergraduate or your graduate level, what you've been studying, the work you've been doing already, what you're passionate about, what you are really interested in, and why that passion would be better served by pursuing it in another country for a year, exploring that from an international perspective, or perhaps learning from another country about the ways that they engage with that passion that you have, whether that's math, English, a certain foreign language, or in the arts, as we see that. This is also where you would fall into your arts projects. So if you're really interested in the way that they do specific sorts of drumming in a specific sort of country, because you've been practicing drum throughout your undergraduate or graduate experience, you can do that with a Fulbright. Go hone your craft abroad. In between the arts projects and this independent research, you see that word study, and more countries are open to this idea of you going to their country to earn a master's degree fully funded. There's a couple different ways that can look on a Fulbright. If you were to go to the UK page, for instance, you'll see about an arm and a half's worth of different opportunities paired with specific institutions. So for those instances, those are our named awards, where it says we have this funding set aside for this institution. You apply to both the institution and this Fulbright award at the same time. In other countries, they're a little bit more open with it, and they say you identify that program. You tell us where in that country you want to go and why it is that you have to do your graduate degree study in another country. Why will you be better served by doing it in another country than in the US? Many of these programs are actually going to just be that academic year long, because in a lot of countries they're not quite as ornery as US higher education, and they can give you a master's degree in a year rather than that 2 or 3. But some of them will be 2-year programs, right? And it's important to understand that Fulbrights are typically for 1 year. So in those cases where they are 2-year programs, there's a few different things that can happen. Some awards, I say some, may give an additional year of funding based on academic performance. Others will expect you to find some sources of funding once you arrive in country. And I will say that that is a lot more doable once you're on the ground in that country. And we see that Fulbrighters being quite successful. But under this study research, again, that independent project that you're so passionate about and something that you've done in the past, study where you're earning a graduate degree, or pursuing that arts program or project abroad, where you are actually going to practice your art, to perform your music, to sing those vocals, right? Not study it from an academic perspective. The other side of this program, and the fastest growing side of the program, is actually the English teaching assistantship. The English teaching assistantship has over 1,250 opportunities in 75 countries. And again, for an academic year on this one, folks, you're going to be embedded in a classroom or education center abroad, and that experience is going to look really different by country to country, or even from classroom to classroom or program to program within one country when you are looking into the English teaching assistantship. On our website, we actually have a drop-down menu that gives you a little bit more detail of all the countries that you can go to on an ETA grant and what that's going to look like. Because with an ETA grant, you may be teaching at the kindergarten level, you may be teaching at the university level, you may be teaching at both high school and middle school level, and that's really going to depend on the country and the program that you decide to apply for. Typically, you are going to be an assistant teacher, right? You're going to be providing a fluent English level of language in the classroom. But you're also there to not just teach English or to assist with teaching English. You're there to be a US presence in the classroom and teach US culture from your perspective, whatever that might be. And again, Just on this call alone, we have institutions from all over the country, and we have different perceptions of backgrounds and experiences with what our American experiences are. And it's important that we're getting all of those abroad. And so we're really looking for people who are willing to be in that teaching setting, but also share a little bit about the slice of America that they come from, right? So you win a Fulbright, what do you get? This is a fully funded grant opportunity. We'd really love for this to be a bit of a financial no-brainer for you should you get the opportunity to go on a Fulbright. What a fully funded academic year abroad for us looks like is round-trip airfare to your host country, a monthly stipend that'll be based on the cost of living in the host country. And this is going to vary from country to country based on that cost of living, but you can expect to live at a graduate student standard of living in that country. It's going to cover things like a housing allowance. It's going to have things for your meals and your incidentals and such, transportation. An accident and sickness benefits should anything happen to you while you're abroad. And then other possible benefits, that's going to vary by country. And those can include things like support for dependents. If you have a spouse or children you'd like to bring along with you. Some countries will list on their award description that they'll give you that dependent support so that you can make it more feasible for you to go abroad with your whole family. And we get to get a little bit more bang for our buck in terms of the person-to-person exchange because you're bringing along kids or a spouse along with you. And we got a whole bunch of citizen diplomats going, not just you. Research allowance, if your project calls for it or if it's available. Tuition, should you want to take courses on the side, or should the certain country only be open to giving you that living, cost of living, and round-trip airfare and such? There's funding for tuition. Language lessons. Now, it is important to note that Fulbrights typically aren't there just for you to learn a language necessarily, and many of these countries may require you to have some level of language ability in order to get over to that country and be eligible in the first place. But for a lot of countries, they're going to offer you language lessons to make you a little bit more successful on your grant. And one that comes to mind immediately is in South Korea. If you're an ETA in South Korea, you get off the plane and you spend 8 weeks of intensive language training, English teaching training, and training about South Korean history and culture. And at the end of that, I understand your eyes are bleeding, but nevertheless, you speak a little Korean and you're able to get by in the country a little bit more fluidly and better, right? Enhancement activities. These things start with your pre-departure orientation, whether that's here in the US or an orientation in the host country, but they go further than that. These are cultural engagements that happen throughout your Fulbright experience, opportunities for regional travel, conferences, and chances for you to connect with your fellow Fulbrighters in that country. And then probably the most important thing on this list, again, folks, this is a federally funded program, so we absolutely have funding set aside for reasonable accommodations for folks with disabilities. We want this grant to be as accessible as possible, and we have folks who will absolutely work with you to see that those accommodations are met should you receive one of these grants and decide to go on it. We don't want that to be a hindrance to you applying because you think you might not get the support that is going to be necessary for you to be successful on your grant. That's what you get in country, but one thing that I always hear from Fulbrighters is that the post-grant benefits are far more beneficial and of course long-lasting than those that happen in country. And chief among those things is going to be access to this Fulbright alumni network. Fulbright's been around for 75 years. Over 400,000 people have participated in this program since its inception. And I think one of the really exciting things about this network is that it is a global network. It has people all over the country, and that it's an interdisciplinary network. When we're sending our Fulbrighters abroad, I just showed you that open study research, that's open to all disciplines. So when you're sitting down at orientation, if you're a mathematician, you very well might have a poet next to you who's on a Fulbright and on the same award that you're on. And on your other side, an anthropologist. And sitting behind you, there's a biologist who's super interested in fish. They're a fish biologist and that's their thing. And they're doing a fish study research project, right? And what's going to combine this network together is that it's a group of people who are all willing to pick up their lives and go to another country for a year, which attracts a very specific sort of person. And it's also a group of people who are all really passionate about something, whether that's exposing themselves to another culture through teaching English or earning a master's degree in a foreign country. You can get access to the State Department's alumni exchange website, only available to those folks who go through a State Department funded exchange. 12 months of non-competitive hiring eligibility should you be interested in a career in federal service. This is going to give you a leg up in that process to applying to a federal government agency. a lifetime Fulbright email address, which I can say absolutely will impress your grandparents with when you send them e-cards at fulbrightmail.org, very fancy. And then access to the Fulbright Association, so you can really harness the power of that network. That is the alumni network that is outside of IIE, outside of the State Department, just Fulbrighters doing very cool Fulbright stuff after their grants, right? Are there any things, again, I'm posing this out to the FPAs folks. I'm sorry, students who are on the call or applicants who are on the call, but we just have far too many folk on the call to ask for questions from everybody. Is there anything I can clarify from your perspective as FPAs folks? Anything that you think I might speak a little bit more about? All right, see Chanel, I'm doing okay. You thought I wasn't gonna be able to do it, yeah. Just a couple more slides here, folks, and then we're going to go into our breakout rooms. I do want to just say once more for anyone who's just joined us, please do put your institution in your name, as Chanel is currently sorting you into breakout rooms now. We want to make sure you end up in the right space so you're able to hear more information from your Fulbright program advisors. But by and large, this is what is going to be necessary for you to apply for a Fulbright grant. What's here on the screen. I always like to say that one of the challenges of the Fulbright application is not that it is terribly long, it's that it's in fact quite short. And there's a lot that we want you to say in the very limited amount of space that we give you to say it. So we're going to get started with some basic program data, personal data and program information from you. That's going to include things like where you've done your education, your background, the birthday, those sort of little snippets about your life. The first written part of your application is going to take the part in these 3 short answer questions. It's really important that you're spending a lot of quality time on these, just as much as you do your essays perhaps, because chronologically, these are the first things that our reviewers are going to see. It's going to be an abstract of your statement of grant purpose, which no FPA on this call will let you copy paste from your statement of grant purpose. I can promise you that. It's going to be an abstract sort of telling you briefly what it is that you're proposing to do with this project, whether that's teaching English, studying, doing that independent project, or arts. It's going to ask you about host country engagement. And it's really important to note that no matter who you are or what you're going abroad to do with a Fulbright, host country engagement is not only going to be expected, it's going to be required of you. Fulbright is one of the only prestigious award opportunities, one of the only funding opportunities where we really absolutely want you to be interested in your studies. We want you to be spending and putting in those hours teaching in the classroom, but we also need you to step away from that to fulfill the mission. So what we're asking with host country engagement is, how do you expect to do that? How do you expect not only to meet the people who are standing next to you in the lab or in the archives, but how do you expect to meet your neighbors or people who are interested in the same things as you, or people who are going to expose you to cultural elements of that host country that you might not otherwise have had the chance to experience? So host country engagement is going to be really important, and just an exercise for you to sort of tease out for the reviewers of your application the ways in which you hope to engage with the people of that host country. And then finally, future plans. And specifically, this is going to say future plans upon return to the US. You're going to get a lot out of this experience should you be accepted and decide to go on a Fulbright. But one of the great benefits of Fulbright is that it's truly an exchange, and that you get to come back to the US and share what you've learned with your communities here, whether that's your community at your higher education institution, your family or your home communities back home, and certainly ongoing throughout your career. So we want to hear a little bit about how this fits into your trajectory. The backbone of your application, though, is going to take the form of these 2 essays. The first essay is going to be a statement of grant purpose. And that's really going to be the who, what, where, when, why of your Fulbright application. For study research, you only get 2 pages in order to tell us everything that you're going to be doing in that country and why it is that you'd like to do it, and why you must go to that country specifically in order to do it. So again, not a whole lot of space for all the things that we're asking you to do, which is why, again, it is critically important for you to start working with your Fulbright program advisors. At least let them know that you're interested in applying as early as possible, so that you're able to go through multiple drafts and start thinking about and strategizing how many sets of eyes you can have on this. Not just from your Fulbright program advisors, but from professors that you work closely with, your peers at your institution, maybe even a family member who knows nothing about what you study, right? So that you're making sure that it makes sense to just about everyone who might read your application. For English teaching assistants, that's going to be even less space. You're only going to get 1 page to really work with to tell us, again, all that information and your motivations and background that would qualify you to take on this incredible responsibility of embedding yourself in a foreign education system. Moving on from that essay, you're going to get an opportunity to introduce yourself to the review committee on a more personal level through this personal statement. It's only one page, but this is a really great chance for you to talk more about what your attraction is on a personal level to that host country, your cultural curiosities, the things that make you not just a great student as that you may sort of envision yourself and see yourself as, but how do you envision yourself as a great cultural ambassador? Because that's what we're looking for in this program. Sure, great students often make excellent Fulbrighters, but not necessarily all the time. And similarly, some people, as we'll talk about this when I get to transcripts, some people with more modest GPAs are more successful as Fulbrighters because they are more adaptable, they're more flexible, they're more curious and open to new experiences. And that enables them to really fulfill the mission of Fulbright in a very unique way. Right? And that's what we're looking for from everybody, regardless of that GPA on there. We're looking for adaptable, flexible people who are eager to get abroad and share their slice of America with the rest of the world. And perhaps more so than that, learn about the rest of the world through the eyes of people from those countries. And the statement of grant purpose and your whole application is really a great place to do that. Getting into reports and references, we're going to need a foreign language evaluation only if your country requires a foreign language level of proficiency. On each award description, it's going to be quite clear about that, whether or not a foreign language is either not required, recommended, meaning that your application will be accepted and read, and you may even get the grant if you have none of the language, so long as you're able to speak to that in your application, or required. And if it does say required, folks, you are going to need to reach that level of language ability in order to be eligible and go on this grant. And the foreign language evaluation form is the way that you demonstrate that language ability. An example I'll give you of this is that almost anywhere in the Spanish-speaking world, they're going to require you to speak at least intermediate Spanish. It's a commonly taught language here in the US, so the expectation is that in order to be competitive and in fact eligible to go to, say, Mexico or Colombia, intermediate Spanish is going to be required. In some countries that speak Spanish, advanced may be even required. Going further than that, if you're proposing a study research project or graduate degree enrollment that'll be taught in Spanish, you need to demonstrate the language ability that not only meets the eligibility requirement, but demonstrates that you're able to do the project you're proposing to do. If you are proposing to parachute into the hills of Nepal and do an interview-based research project with a specific group of people who speak a very specific language, and you don't speak any of that language, then your project's not feasible, right? You need to demonstrate that you have the ability not only to meet the eligibility requirements, but complete the project you're proposing to do. So that's how language works. The foreign language evaluation form itself is something that's submitted by a college level teacher of that language, where they're going to sit down with you and evaluate your reading, your writing, your speaking, and your listening, and determine what level of that language that you are at that time, right? For those less commonly taught languages, you can get a native speaker of that language who is college educated and not related to you in order to do that language evaluation. But that's not going to be for Spanish, right? Because you can find a Spanish professor somewhere in the US who can do that for you. We're talking about like Bahasa Indonesia here, folks. And I don't want anyone to get discouraged from applying to a country that they might want to go to because they think they're going to need the language before checking that language requirement. Because many countries with Fulbright, no language is required whatsoever in order to go on a study research or an ETA opportunity. It's always going to be helpful, sure. Going abroad can be challenging, and certainly knowing the host country language is a way to remove one of those barriers and one of those challenges, or at least make it a little less challenging. But please do take a look at the requirements before you count any country out that you're excited about going to. And make sure that, in fact, that you're eligible to apply and that you're not discounting it just because you think you don't have the language at the onset. 3 reference letters, folks, moving on from foreign language evaluation, 3 reference letters who can speak to your ability to complete the project you're proposing to do. I think that it's important, and the question a lot of times, does it have to be all professors? Can it be someone I've worked with? Can it be someone I've taught, right? Talk to your Fulbright program advisors and really chew through that, especially if you're really passionate about the people that you'd like to write your letters of recommendation. One of the things your Fulbright program advisors may be able to help you with is identifying who's going to be best to write letters of recommendation for the project that you're proposing to do, right? You may have a really great relationship with a certain former boss that you have, but if they're not able to speak to those qualities that would make you a great teacher in the classroom, then maybe that there's someone else who may be able to better do that. And you can tease that out with your Fulbright program advisor to help you identify who's going to write you the strongest letters of recommendation for this particular application. And then you can keep that boss in your back pocket for another application that you're doing, right? And then the campus committee evaluation form. Now, this campus committee evaluation form is something that all the students on this call have the opportunity to attach to their application because you have a Fulbright program advisor. And again, I'll say this once more, not all campuses have a Fulbright program advisor. And because you have this resource on your campus, it's important that you're going through the institutional application process, meeting the deadlines that your program advisor set out for you, whether that is a campus deadline or an essay deadline, and really incorporating the feedback that you receive throughout this process. And that was what's going to lead to this campus committee evaluation form, which is a form that your Fulbright program advisor or someone on the committee that may interview you on your campus fills out for you, right? And this provides additional context to your application, can really wrap a bow on this whole thing. And again, you have this ability to add this to your application as someone who goes through the Fulbright institution process. It's a privilege to have. I do want to say, I mentioned that interview here, and every process, a campus process is going to be different. I encourage you to grill your Fulbright program advisors when you get into your breakout rooms about what exactly that may look like. I'm kidding, folks, take it easy on them. It is only March. But if you do have an interview on campus, I just want to hit the brakes on that right now to say that the Fulbright interview process at the campus level is not a process to weed people out. It is a process to lift people up, right? So there is no limit to the amount of applications that an institution can put forward. There's no limit to the amount of people from an institution who can receive Fulbrights, right? I'm looking at you, Baylor, with 200 people registered for this event. You can all apply, and if your applications are all stellar, it is possible that you all get in. So it's not your Fulbright program advisor's job to weed anybody out through this process. That interview there and that application deadline is there to help you so that you're able to incorporate critical feedback from multiple perspectives into your application, because this is a competitive application process, but it's also accessible should you go through these processes and really take the feedback that you get. So don't be intimidated by that interview. Use it as the resource that it's intended to be, and work with your Fulbright program advisors closely so that they know what to put in that campus committee evaluation form when they do get to that stage. Transcripts. We do need an academic record from everybody who's thinking about applying to this program to get a sense of what you've done in your higher education experience. It is important that we note, and this may be a surprise to some people on this call who may be engaging with Fulbright for the first time, that there's no minimum GPA requirement for the Fulbright US Student Program. And for those honors folks on the call, I am not saying that your strong GPA is going to be any sort of hindrance whatsoever, right? A strong GPA is a wonderful thing to have as part of your application. But a strong GPA alone does not a Fulbright win, right? And it's not going to completely sink an application either. For the transcripts, what we're collecting from you is we really want to see a strong academic record as it relates to the project you're proposing to do. So if you got started in, say, political science, and then you got a C+ in comparative political science in your first semester, and you decided political science wasn't ready for you, that's highly specific because that's what happened to me. I went over to rhetoric, and rhetoric worked out a little bit better for me, and that's what I ended up majoring in. For the Fulbright, if I'm not proposing a political science project, then we're not too terribly worried about those grades that don't relate to to the project you're proposing to do. For ETAs, certainly, we're going to want some strong grades as they relate to English composition, things like that. You need to demonstrate that you're prepared to teach English in a foreign classroom. But if you got started as a dance major and you found out you had no rhythm, you went into organic chemistry after that, and things were looking pretty sunny in organic chemistry, you're proposing an organic chemistry project, that's what we're interested in. And vice versa for you dancers out there who were pressured into going to organic chemistry at the onset, and you said, sorry, mom and dad, I want to dance. And you ended up doing really well in dance in undergrad. There's space for both of you in Fulbright. But transcripts want to see a strong academic record as it relates to the project, but no minimum GPA requirement on that, folks, okay? And then two other application components, and then I just got a few more slides and I'm gonna let your FPA speak, I promise. But the letter of affiliation. Now, this can be one of the most intimidating aspects of applying to Fulbright if you're choosing to apply to an open study research grant. But I do want to let you know right now, it is March. The application is not due until October. And for some of you who may be a little bit earlier in your academic careers, you got a lot of time to work on this. but this is intimidating, but it's accessible and it's exciting. The letter of affiliation is a non-binding letter that you're going to get from a host institution abroad. Often that's a university, an accredited institution. Sometimes it's a lab or a nonprofit, depending on the country. And what this letter says is, if you get this grant, we'd love to have you. Here's some of the resources that we can offer you in order to make you successful on this grant. Now, these are not financial resources typically, because Fulbright's going to take care of that. These are things like if you need access to a certain set of archives, they're going to be able to offer you that. Lab space, desk space, like that. Perhaps even cultural mentorship, because in many cases, pretty much anywhere you go in the world, there's going to be challenges along the way, and this person may be able to help you confront those challenges, right? But this letter of affiliation, we'd love for it to be on some sort of institutional letterhead. Again, it's non-binding, they're not signing any contract, but you do have to do the legwork of identifying someone to write this letter for you. And again, your Fulbright program advisors may be able to help you harness the networks that you have on campus and identify some of the resources that we have through Fulbright to help you find people who may be able to write these letters for you. But you do want to get started early, especially in those countries. If you're going to one of those countries who has sort of engages with summer differently than we might in America, right? Like you're starting talking to someone in April, they're really excited, and then you don't hear from them for 3 months because people take vacation in other countries quite seriously in some cases. Far more than we do when we're checking email on a beach somewhere for the 1 week off we get, right? So you do want to start that early, put in that legwork, work with the resources that you have available to you in order to get that letter. And then finally, supplementary materials. And this is only for our creative and performing artists. If you are a scientist who has a wonderful singing voice, we don't need to hear that from you for your project if you're proposing a science project, right? But if you are a vocalist, we're going to need you to put forward a portfolio of your vocals that demonstrate that you're capable of taking on this project you're proposing to do. We're going to want to see a collection of your paintings or your sculpture, if that's what you're proposing to do abroad. Or if you're an actor, we're going to want to see you give one of those monologues that you're really proud of. And you're going to put that together in the application and submit that so that people who are artists, not just academics, but artists in the field, can give an evaluation that you are, in fact, have the artistic chops to complete this project that you're proposing to do. Okay. FPAs. Any part of that I didn't go over in excruciating detail too well? All right. Thank you for that, folks. Really briefly, I want to go over factors in selection and application timeline, and then I'm going to send you on your way. So let's get started over with the application timeline, even though I know you're probably all reading the factors in selection as I say that. This is fine. You can go back over with your Fulbright program advisor the application timeline. But you're going to get started designing your project, preparing your application in April through September of your grant year. Now, our competition is going to launch on March 31st of this year. That's when all the awards are going to be rolled over in that catalog and refreshed and new. Many of those awards are by and large the same on an annual basis. So you can absolutely take a look now, right? Start looking and researching. And that goes for anybody who's not ready to apply this year. Start looking now, start thinking, start strategizing, and start envisioning yourself in that country now. So never too early to start, but April is when you really want to start putting pen to paper, right? You're going to work on it all through that time period. And then between August and September usually is when your campus will have the campus deadline. We'll talk more about this in your breakout rooms. You're going to need that campus deadline to go through your campus process so that you are able to put forward a really strong application on the national deadline, which is going to be October 12th this year at 5 p.m. Eastern time. There is no flexibility on that 5 p.m. folks. We get a lot of applications and we simply don't have the capacity. So not going to be a problem for you because you already met your campus deadline, but please do pay attention to that. After that, between November and December, it's going to go into national screening committees. And this is the U.S. part of the review. It's a binational review process. This is going to have faculty from all over the country come and read your applications and either recommend or not recommend your application for further review by the host country. So this is going to be the first touch point where you find out whether or not you are recommended or not recommended. All recommended applications move on to the host country that are reviewed between January and May in that host country. And so that it's the host country who ultimately determines who comes to their country on a Fulbright grant. And notifications for final selection can happen anywhere between that sort of March and June timeline. But under normal circumstances, our hope and our goal is to notify you by at least April 15th. Because we know that Fulbright may not be the only thing you're applying for at any given time. And we want you to be able to make an informed decision and hopefully choose Fulbright. So we want to be able to give you that notification before you get notified about perhaps grad schools that you may be applying for or such. Because it's important to know You may be able to defer your grad school. I can't speak to that. That's between you and your grad school or a certain program that you're entering into, but Fulbrights are non-deferrable. So if you were given a Fulbright and you chose not to take it, you'd have to reapply the next year. And we welcome you to do that, and we encourage you to do it. Many people get Fulbrights on their second time or third time applying. That goes for people who receive it, and people who don't receive it their first time. So then, yeah, between March and June, you're going to get that final selection notification and be notified that you're going to go on a Fulbright. Things we're looking for from those application components that I just talked about in the last application. These are in no particular order, but I love that this is the first bullet point on there. Quality and feasibility of the proposal. And this goes for anything you're proposing to do on there. 8 to 10 months, folks, may feel like a lot of time, but it's actually not once you get your boots on the ground in that country, right? 8 to 10 months, you want to make sure that the project you're proposing to do is feasible in that time period, that it is a quality project, that you've put a good amount of thought and work into sort of formulating it, and that it's also feasible not just in time period, but in terms of what it is that you're capable of at your level. You know, we're not necessarily going to expect someone just out of their bachelor's degree to put forward a PhD level project for their Fulbright, and that's okay. You know, we want to see you putting forward a feasible project for the academic or professional level that you are approaching this application with. And you also want to make sure that it's culturally feasible too, right? I mentioned those interviews in the hills of Nepal a little bit earlier. I can't tell you how many times I've been in one of these selection meetings and people haven't given any thought to the cultural feasibility of the project they're putting forward. And that it's really written from a very US angle of what would be appropriate and allowable here in the US. And as this is a public diplomacy program, you want to put on your diplomat hat and be respectful of the culture of that country that you're proposing to go to and exchange with, and make sure that your project is in fact culturally feasible. Academic and professional record, again, we want that to line up with what you're proposing to do in the host country and hopefully where you're going after that. Personal qualifications, these are some of those things I mentioned earlier. Adaptability, flexibility, cultural sensitivity is a really big one. Are you someone who can demonstrate that throughout your application in various ways? Language preparation, if it's going to be required. Language is going to be really important for those folk who are interested in going to a country that requires language or has a project that's going to require you to have a certain level of language. The preference factors as established by the Foreign Fulbright Scholarship Board, those are very long. They're available online. I encourage you to Google them if you are interested. But those are, the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board is the entity that eventually approves all Fulbrighters to go on their grant. And then the extent to which the candidate and project will help advance the Fulbright goals and mission. I said it at the onset, and I would say it 15 times to you if you'd let me, but I'll just say it once more. That mission is to foster mutual understanding between the people of the US and people of other countries by way of this exchange. You can put a Nobel Prize winning project in front of a Fulbright committee, and these people are really brilliant faculty. They could probably identify that. They could say, oh, this person, this is a Nobel Prize winning project right here. This is brilliant. But if that mission's not there, you can very respectfully go win your Nobel Prize somewhere else, right? We want to send abroad people who are passionate about that project. We want to have brilliance come out of this, and we want to see your brilliance, whatever that might be, your idiosyncratic excellence come through on an application. But we also want to see that you're interested in the mission and fulfilling that mission of mutual understanding. So keep that in mind as you're writing every aspect of this application. Requirements of individual countries are so important. And then again, folks, we are looking to send abroad a cohort that is as diverse as the US itself. So thinking about what slice of America you're from, thinking about what forms of diversity you may represent. Again, very big word for us, right? We want to show the rest of the world that there is no one type of American, that we don't all speak the same way. We certainly don't all look the same way. California is not New York. New York is not Wyoming. And none of those places are necessarily Kansas, right? So we want to see that in an application. What slice of America do you come from? All right, I think that just about does it for me, folks. I am going to try and bounce over to the website, but these are some of the ways that you can keep connected with us at IIE. Again, your Fulbright program advisors are going to be your first sort of point of contact throughout this entire application process. But that's just because they're the best ones suited to advising you through this and giving you really great information based on the context of you as a student. It is not to say that we're not willing to speak with you. We're always hope to speak with you through any questions you may have about programmatic aspects of it. And this is the way that you can contact us, either through our social media accounts, but at fbstudent@iie.org, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Our social media accounts also are a really wonderful way to learn about the things that Fulbrighters do. You know, the people that they're meeting, the foods they're eating, the various and different adventures they're going on on their Fulbright grants. So I encourage you to check those out if you are, in fact, active on social media. Before I turn it over, I will go try and get over to this website here. But Fulbright Program Advisors, anything I can clarify a little bit more about as I'm pulling up the website? All right. See, Chanel, I told you. I said it. I said, I'm going to do this presentation. I'm going to get the information across.
You got it.
Thank you. I appreciate you admitting that, Chanel.
Of course.
That's very supportive of me, folks. I'm kidding. Folks, are you able to see the Fulbright website? Did I do that right? Great. See the people jumping, having a wonderful time in locations abroad? All right, so through this Fulbright website, folks, we hope that all the information that you need in order to apply is available on that website. Of course, you're going to need to ask questions throughout the way. If you don't get your Fulbright Program Advisor's contact information throughout this presentation, you can find them by searching your Fulbright Program Advisor here. Just typing in your institution there, and you'll be able to find your Fulbright Program Advisor. Definitely go through the eligibility, folks. Again, we give the basic eligibility here, but there are more nuanced eligibility standards that you want to take a look at. Say you're a dual citizen of a certain country. You may not be able to go to that country which you hold dual citizenship with, and we have a full list under eligibility, right? So certainly take a look at eligibility, award benefits. We have some wonderful videos and tutorials that can take you through the nuts and bolts of the program. If you are tired of hearing my voice and you want to hear it from someone else, I did the tutorials too, folks. You're going to hear me again. Sorry. And then countries. If you dive into these countries here, this is where it gets quite exciting. This is where you can just go through the world map. If you have somewhere specific in mind, you can just go ahead and take a glance at India if that's where you're really passionate about going. And you can look at the different award opportunities that they have. 65 different opportunities for open study research in India. And looking down at this, you see whether or not language is going to be required. Not for India, right? What degree levels they're accepting. They'll accept bachelor's level, master's, doctoral. They're open to everybody. Additional information about whether or not you can bring dependents, things like that. And all of these are going to be slightly different. So do read those countries that you're interested in going to, because at a certain point, you're going to need to choose one country and one award type to apply for. And that's part of the Fulbright application, is narrowing it down to that one award, and these country descriptions are going to help you do that. Final place that I will show you that I think is really important as you're thinking about applying is our alumni ambassadors page. We select about 20 alumni ambassadors on an annual basis who very graciously put forward their email addresses here, where you can contact them and ask them questions about their Fulbright, about their identity, about their experiences that led to their Fulbrights, on their Fulbrights after. And you can learn more about, if you're someone who's really into botany, ask Ashley about what it was like going to Fiji in botany. If you're a creative and performing artist, Geetha could tell you what it was like putting her portfolio together so she could go to India to do a conducting and vocals arts grant. Or if you want to know what it is like to be an ETA, Janae Nurse would be a wonderful person to reach out to. But anyone who you might identify or relate with on this would be more than happy to talk to you about their process applying and about what their experience was like. All right, that about does it for me, folks. So thank you for sticking with me on that. The more exciting portion of this is coming up as you break into your breakout rooms and you speak with your Fulbright advisors. Do let us know if you have any questions. Chanel and I are going to be sitting right here. But thank you so much for listening, and we send you on your way now.
All right, you guys should get notifications soon.